Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together. All right, real quick before we get started on the show, I'm just going to talk about Treeline Academy. You've heard me say it. I can't even tell you how many times. Mark Livesey is treelineacademy.net. That's treelineacademy.net. Sign up. Use the promo code PC2020. Save yourself $20. Can't say it enough. It's awesome, amazing, most comprehensive e-scouting course out there. Check it out for yourself. Sign up. Use promo code PC2020. And now let's get to the show.
All right, so I'm sitting here and I am talking to Robbie Denning. And Robbie, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, Robbie Denning. I live here in Southeast Idaho. Father of 3, happily married, all that good stuff. Love hunting big mule deer.
So I'm kind of curious, Robbie, how did the whole quest for mule deer start? Was it always mule deer? Was it elk? Were you raised on something completely different? Did you grow up out west?
Yeah. Born and raised right here. I live about a mile from the house I was born in, so haven't made it very far. And my dad was a big buck hunter. Southeast Idaho was really good back I was born in 69 and it was really good there, 60s, 70s, even into the 80s, kind of like a lot of places. And, that's just what dad liked. I mean, he hunted other stuff too. We archery hunted elk and, dad was always bear hunting in the springs and stuff. But it was really, big bucks that he was the most excited about. So that got me fired up about them. And then when I was about 20, I met Kurt Darner, and that really lit me on fire. He was the author of How to Find Giant Bucks, and been kind of a controversial guy, but still, totally legit deer hunter. There's no doubt. And I just got fired up about it. So just as I got older, I had to pretty much focus on mule deer. You're a super busy guy, running a couple of companies and just trying to do all the things the guy's got to do to make a living, really is what it gets down to. And so I just gave up everything else because mule deer just required that kind of focus to do well out. They're pretty hard, and I think they're getting harder too right now. We're just kind of in a down cycle right now due to hard winters, and just access to tags has been tougher. That's probably the biggest part of it. So it just takes everything I got, and some guys are really good at hunting multiple species, but I just found I always felt like I wasn't giving it my best shot at the end of the year. And archery hunting elk, it wasn't that hard, I didn't think. I wasn't killing a bunch of big bulls or anything, but it wasn't hard to fill a tag, and I got kind of bored with that. I think I killed 4 elk in 4 years, or 4 and 5 or something like that, and that's back when compounds only shot about 40 yards. And so I just really wanted to do better at buck hunting. Nobody was archery hunting bucks back then. Hardly anybody. And so as I got into that, it just took a lot of time. And as I've gotten older too, and I think it was this way when I was younger too. I just didn't pay as much attention to it it just takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot out of you. And there was one hunt I went on this year, 11 days. I was there 9 of them all by myself, 12 miles in, no human contact other than through my inReach, because there was hardly any cell service there. And, it's not like it's super, I don't want to make it sound like it's super physical. For some guys it is, but I sit on my duff a lot in glass, and, I use horses. So, I'm not having to transport myself from hunt area to hunt area. I use a horse for that. I only maybe hike, 1 to 3 miles a day. Usually if I'm hiking more than that, I'm just walking past the deer. But what I find is when I do that is I'm tired when I get home. I'm really tired, and I just need to regenerate. I don't feel like going hunting. I don't want to go hunting. I don't even want to say the word hunting. You know what I mean? That's just where I used to just like try to push myself through it. And, when I was trying to hunt everything and, oh yeah, man, I got elk season's open this weekend, man, we got to go. And I just wouldn't end up enjoying myself, if you know what I mean.
Oh,
Where
absolutely.
now, man, I'm either hunting or I'm resting from hunting, in the fall. That's been good for me. I can get charged up, and, I usually hunt somewhere between 30 and 50 days, which isn't a ton, but I want to be sharp when I'm doing it. And when I'm tired and when I'm worn down, and, you would think you always want to be there, but you don't always want to be there if you're tired, and I just find I'm not giving it my best if I'm not just focused on it. And that's just me. That's just kind of how I'm built. Other guys are totally different. I know guys that go from hunt to hunt to hunt, and they do just fine.
Yeah. No, I find myself, especially if I'm solo hunting and there's nobody to share the burden of the work or different things, that just little trivial chores that you don't realize until you're doing it all by yourself. But after a while, I find myself kind of getting a little bit burned out. And I almost tell myself in my head, it's like, I need to go back to work just so I can kind of recover or recoup, and it's kind of sad to say that you're wanting to go back to work, but then I find myself, I get back to work for about a week and get back in the groove and realize how irritated I get and everything gets on my nerves and I want to get back out in the woods again. So
we need both.
It's a vicious cycle,
Yep. But same thing, dude. That last day before the hunt, I can't wait to get off work. Then that first day I'm back to work, it just feels like a little bit of a rest. I can kind of shut my mind off. But yeah, it only takes about a week. Man, I'm fired up and ready to go again. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, but that ties into what we were talking about before, because, back in the 90s, archery elk season opened August 30th and deer season. So, I try to hunt deer, and then, as the elk got bugling, I try to do that. So by the end of September, I'd hunted every weekend, probably another full week somewhere in there. And then our rifle deer season opened October 5th. So it's just a couple of days off, and boom, you're rifle hunting. And then elk opened October 15th. And so then that was going, and I just decided, that's just too much. I'm not doing a good job at any of it. And so now ideally for me, if I can put about a week or two between hunts, especially long hunts, 8, 10, 12 days, maybe even 2 weeks between hunts. And I've had a couple of falls where it just fell together. I hunted, 10, 12 days in September, had a couple of weeks off, 10, 12 days in October, a couple of weeks off, 10, 12 days in November, a couple of weeks off. That was about right. Rested, ready to go, fired up. And also, I'm not the kind of guy that can just leave everything undone at home. I can't just leave everything a wreck. I have 30 employees, busy wife, family, got to make sure everything's kind of set up. And so, having that little bit of extended time when I'm home too, just kind of helps keep things running. You know what I mean?
Yep. So I got to ask you though, how do you keep your wife happy? And I'm sure your kids are kind of older by now, but what was it like when they were younger, and what'd you do to kind of keep her happy and sane while you were out there and gone for 10 days at a time?
My wife is I just married right, and we only dated 6 months, and she knew me through one hunting season. And I didn't want to be the kind of guy that's like, hey, this is me, you just have to accept it. I just didn't want to be that way. But I just tried to let her know this is kind of how I roll. And I remember I'd get home from hunting, and she wasn't a hunter. I mean, her dad hunted a little bit, but she just didn't have that kind of a background. He wasn't like crazy over the top like I was. But she was just a good lady, and she was just excited for me to go. And I lived about 8 miles from her. She lived in town, I lived out in the country. And I remember one night I got home, I'd been gone like 10 days, and it's just crappy cell phones back then. Just I maybe got a hold of her one time the whole time I was on the hunt. There was no inReaches or anything like that. And I don't know, I just remember thinking, she's probably thinking I'm just so lame. And I got home, and I called her, and hey, I'm out here. I got home, got the horses put away, and she's like, oh, I'm just gonna come out. I'm just gonna come see if it's okay. And we were just talking about this the other night, and because my kids were just talking about our marriage. Mom, and you were happy. What are some of your happy times? And I was telling this. I said I remember when she drove all the way out here, like late at night. She had to work. She was a high school counselor. She had to work the next day, and she was so excited to see me. And I remember thinking, this is great. I've been hunting, and she was just really cool about it, especially the fact that she didn't really understand it. Like, I remember some of her questions were like so funny. Like, so where do you go to the bathroom? I'm like, you're in the woods. You go anywhere you want. I mean, just funny, the funniest stuff, and like, I think that it was either that trip or another trip. Like, I didn't get a deer, but she was like, but isn't it like a lot harder if you get a deer? Isn't it like better if you don't get one? I'm like, well, I guess you could look at it that way. just innocent, just really innocent about it, but endearing. And so to answer your question, she's just a good lady. And I remember, like, dude, we had twins, and that is hard. And, I cut back as much as I could. And, when I did go hunting, my mom lived in Arizona, we were so freaking poor back then. I still got together enough money to get her up here and to help my wife, because I think I was going to Colorado that year. And I remember my mom, who's a big supporter of me, was like, you have got a genuine wife. You know what she said about you when you were gone? I said, what's that? And they were just talking about it. And she's like, it's so cool that you're okay with Robbie hunting and everything. And Jody just said, you know what? He needs to be happy too. This isn't just about me. And so my mom kind of relayed that back to me. And I just thought, that's why we're happily married. Yeah. It's not this thing that it has to be like, this is what I do and I'm going to hunt. You woman, you stay. I mean, God, I would never want to treat anybody that way. But, she just what she said. It's not just about her, that I have to be happy too. And so, she was willing to suffer some so that I could do what I want to do. And so the answer to your question, I just make sure she's taken care of, man. That's what I do. I did it when I was dirt poor, and I do it now. I just make sure that, she's, the things that she cares about, I try to make sure that they're taken care of. If she wants to have a garden, I go cut a spot out of the lawn and make a little place for her to have a garden. If she needs a better car, we figure out how to get her a better car. And then some of just the day-to-day stuff, I just make sure I listen to her. I mean, and I'm not always been that good at it, but, I'm a busy guy, dude. I got a lot of stuff going on, just phones going on constantly, emails. And so I just always try to let her to know that, hey, sometimes I can't, girls have a lot of words, as you know. I don't have as many words as you, but I want to hear everything you got to say. But sometimes I just can't do it right then. But I'm gonna give you my ear. Don't worry about it. And so I do. I try to make sure, it's not every day, and she doesn't even really need it every day. But sometimes I'm just like, hey, phone's gone, computer's off. What do you need? And then she just gets to talk. And so just things like that, man. Is just, I mean, we don't have a magic formula or anything, but we just try to take care of each other's needs, and it's reciprocal.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, that's great. And it kind of parallels mine, but not quite, because my wife and I dated for like 6 years. She's like, when is he ever going to ask me to marry him? It just got to, we were together so long, but like, we'd go to our couples counseling at the church before we got married and all those things. And they did these compatibility quizzes and different things. And they're like, I've never had somebody score so high. You guys just align with your views and everything. And we're like, well, we've been together so long. I mean, we kind of figured each other out by now, and we just know it. But my buddy, it's funny, just today or yesterday, we were talking at work, and he's like, you've got it pretty made. You pretty much do whatever you want. And I'm like, well, I also do whatever she wants to an extent too, to where, it's a give and take. I think that's important. And a lot of people don't realize that. They just take. And then that whole relationship gets strained because of that. Now, I know while I'm hunting, I mean, there's definitely times where it's trying and she's putting the kids to bed because I'm coming home and it's, bedtime and they're little
Mhm.
or whatever. But it's, I mean, we try and make it work, and she realizes that sometimes if you look at the grand scheme of things, it seems so terrible in the moment, but it's only 14, 15, whatever days or 20 days for an entire year, and then it's over. It's gone in an
Right.
instant, and then it's back to normalcy again. And I think that's hard sometimes for a lot of people to grasp, but in the scheme of things,
Yeah.
it's not that bad. But my wife grew up in town and all that kind of stuff too, and I'm a country boy, and at first she was like, "I'm not moving to the country. I don't want to do that." And next thing you know, we get out here, and she's like, "I think we need to move further out. Like, is there somewhere
Mhm.
else where we can
Mhm.
go?" And now she's at the point where she wants to move to, like, she goes, I honestly don't care if we move somewhere to where we go out west or North Dakota or something, to where it's
Mhm.
2 hours to a grocery store, as long as I don't ever see a traffic or a stoplight again. And I was like,
Wow.
okay, well, that might be able to happen, honey. But so it's interesting to see how they change. And I tease her all the time and tell her, before you know it, you're going to start hunting. And she's like, no, no, I'm good.
Could happen.
It could.
Could happen.
Yeah. Has your wife ever showed any interest in it, or you just ever take her
Nope,
out? Or
nope. She's gone. Yep, yep, yep. She's gone with me a few times, and she's woodsy. She likes backpacking and hiking and stuff like that. But the overnight stuff and all that, she's not totally into that. And she could never kill an animal. She's just not. She's just not there. She's not against it by any means. She gets it, and she could kill a mouse. If a mouse ran through the house, she hates him so bad she'd stomp that sucker into hell. But no, she wouldn't hunt. But that's what's so cool about her, is like she just she understands it's important to me, and that's as much as she needs to know. Like, he likes it, so I'll support him on it. And I'm just a lucky man, dude. I really am. Every time I tell that story, I think about just she's pretty dang awesome. And and it makes me want to treat her well, because
yeah,
I know she's made sad. I mean, I'm gone 10, 12 days. We got teenagers. Our twins are 15. Our daughter's 19. She's in college and working, and but still lives with us. And so it's Jody's running the house when I'm gone. It's hard, and but she wants to, and I just what she told my mom. I want him to be happy too. So of course I'm going to try to keep her happy.
that's awesome. That's a great thing to, one, hear it, two, be able to reciprocate, and then
Yep.
going forward, realize that, that strong foundation is what carries you through even when it's tough, and then be able to just continue on like that. That's a good dynamic to have. I wish more people could actually have that, and not settle or not do things like that. So that's pretty good to hear. So I got to ask you though, Robbie, what kind of drove you? Like, I mean, is it high country mule deer, or is it like ag mule deer? What kind of mule deer is your favorite type of deer to go after?
You name it, brother. If they live there, I want to go. If I had to pick one, though, I love high country, open country where you can see deer, but that's gotten harder than ever the last 10 years, because that's where everybody's at. And I've had some awesome low country stuff. I've seen some giant bucks in the low country. Some of this lower country that has a lot of cover actually has bigger bucks, I think. Maybe not as many nice bucks, but that seems like the ones that slip through and get a little older are just some giants. Our deserts aren't very good around here, but I'm always scouting them, and I've seen some pretty nice bucks out there too, but I've never killed one on the desert. But seriously, I like it all. I wish I could go to Mexico. I wish I could go to Canada. I wish, I would hunt it all. It's all awesome. For the most part, I'm hunting mountain mule deer, though. I like the back country, the whole horse angle. I really like that stuff, and that's probably my favorite if I have to just pick one. But, I could see, being an older guy, that's going to get pretty dang tough. Those are big steep mountains, even with horses.
Yeah. So I got to ask you though, what's the biggest things you've seen change as far as like hunting from the time you were a kid to now, as far as like just the direction of it? Like, is it still the same motivations for people? Do you think Instagram or anything like that has completely changed that? Do you think expectations versus reality have changed somewhat. What's kind of your perception on that?
No, people are people, and people were the same in 1970 as they are right now. All that social media has done is magnified it. And when I in my family, my dad had three brothers, so there's four of them. He was on fire, fired up about big bucks. That's what he wanted to do. His brothers were just kind of, they'd kill anything with antlers longer than its ears, And so, fast forward to now, it's kind of like it is now. I mean, a lot of the guys I meet, they don't really care about getting a great big buck. But then there's guys that are just, that's what they focus on. That's what they do. They throw everything they have at it. So I don't think it's that different there. All Instagram, social media has done is connect everybody. Information travels a lot faster now than it used to. So I'm just not a doom and gloomer. I just hunting's awesome, and some of the stuff I read about it, I mean, people are like, effing social media has just ruined hunting, and I'm like, well, maybe because information travels so fast, like Idaho just sponsored a chronic wasting disease hunt where they needed to harvest 87 deer in these 3 or 4 units, and they're going to issue either sex tags in December, which is like hasn't been open in December since the 60s.
Right.
And, it was for residents only. This just happened this week, by the way. And had these 87 tags they put out there. Of course, they put them on the internet, told everybody, look, you got to go to a regional office to buy these. Well, hundreds of people showed up. Guys are all pissed off, hunting's ruined, blah, blah. It's like, no, it's just information travels fast. A lot of people, found out about it. And, but when I was a kid, the late buck hunt in 69, which is just east of us here, frick, you couldn't draw that tag. You put in for 20 years, you still couldn't draw it. There was no social media then. There was no nothing. And go read Ryan Hatfield's Idaho's Greatest Mule Deer. And look at the effort those guys were putting forth in the 50s and 60s and 70s to kill big bucks. I mean, driving from California, 4 guys in a single cab pickup drive all the way from Southern California to Central Idaho to hunt bucks for a week with an 8-foot bed on their pickup, and they're all sleeping in it. I mean, they were as hardcore as anybody now, and so I just think all social media has done is maybe made it a little more visible, and people are more connected, but hunting's still hunting, it's, and this is what, I mean, I see some of the stuff people are saying about social media, and it's just ruining hunting. And I'm like, yeah. And every year the number of hunters goes down. And yeah, people are like, God, bull crap, man. There's more people in my area than, well, Utah, for example, they peaked at 220,000 deer licenses, I think sometime in the mid to late 80s. So almost 250,000. They issue 90,000 now. All right, they less than half of what they used to, and so, but yet, ask any Joe on the street. Oh yeah, more people now than ever. Well, I don't know what you're talking about, dude. I remember going up here in the 70s, just east of Idaho Falls, freaking pickups everywhere.
Yeah,
everywhere, and so if social media is getting more people into hunting, it's not offsetting the loss in license sales we're seeing nationally. Maybe Western hunting is really popular right now, and in certain areas, you can't hunt and stuff like that. I get all that, but the numbers don't lie. They keep putting them out and say we're down, 2-3 million hunters. And people are like, but those are just rabbit hunters. Yeah, but they're still hunters. That rabbit hunter is going to elect that senator that may fight or not fight for hunting.
And that hunters' dollars are still going to go to the same place that they've always gone. So, I mean, Pittman Robertson for the ammo and all those other things that are funding efforts. So, gear, everything. It's like, how can you complain about, even if there are more people, the success rate isn't going to go down. I mean, half when 90% of the hunters are road hunters anyway and aren't willing to go back, you know, some people might be complaining about, you know, oh, the backcountry is more crowded than I've ever seen. Well, maybe it is a little bit because of technology, but that social media isn't what's got them there. It's the technology that got them back there. You know, maybe social media, somebody inspired them to get back there, but they still made the effort, you know, and
right. Yeah, I agree with you. So you know, it's changed, but it's still not that different to me, I guess, because people are people. You know, that's just it's just what it is. And you know, the one thing that has changed is, and this to me is just the speed of the internet of like I talked about that hunt they had in Idaho this week, and you know, all of these people showed up for these licenses, hardly anybody got them. You know, the draw odds are worse than they used to be, there's no doubt about that. But that doesn't make the hunting worse. You know, that's just more people, you know, putting in for hunts and everything, because the access is easier, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's easier to access that. We have these research services now, Hunt and Fool, Go Hunt, Epic Outdoors. You know, they'll do your applications for you. You know, I remember just in the 90s, like, I have to find the phone number of, there was no internet. Like, how do I find the number of the Colorado Game and Fish? I have to dial the operator and, you know, and get the number and then call them. And can you send me your proclamation of your seasons? And so then you wait a week and it comes and you go through it and you try to figure out, you know, what unit do I put in? And you call and you're dude, I remember handwriting letters, biologists. And so that's what kept the draw odds, but they were crappy then. They were not good. There was still tons of hunts with less than 10% draw odds. And and that's what's changed now is, I mean, I can just Google Colorado wildlife and there's the phone number. I think they're the CPW now, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And dude, there'll be a guy answering the phone from, you know, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m, answering wildlife questions. And so that's made it easier. But in a way, I'm kind of glad, because what if it was still hard? What if there were more reasons for people not to hunt? We can't say we'd have more hunters. You know, and all these guys are like, yeah, but then only the serious guys would hunt. Well, there ain't enough serious guys to fund hunting. That's the problem. There's not enough serious guys. Dude, I know a lot of guys that love to hunt, but if you go add up the actual days they get out a year, it's 3 or 4. It's not that many, but they love it. They buy the guns, they buy, you know, maybe they don't buy Sitka, but, you know, they buy whatever Sportsman's Warehouse has. I mean, they're still supporting hunting. And so if it was just harder to get into hunting, like, which is what a lot of people want, like, what's the little, I see it on Instagram now, it's like deglorify, demonetize. They have this little saying on hunting, you know, and it's like, okay, we can do that. Maybe the draws will go up 20%, but everything. But what's it going to look like 25 years from now? You know, when my son's my age, you know, or close to it, is, I just don't think it's good to make something so exclusive and exclude so many people. I mean, it's something like 95% of Americans don't hunt now. The only reason we have legal hunting is because they're either not paying attention or they support it at some level because they know somebody. You know, they at least haven't shown up at the ballot box to vote it down. All that's changing now. Is, I think Washington just lost their spring bear hunt, or I have my state mixed up. So you see what I mean? Is there strength in numbers? And so I'm always going to be pushing for the numbers. And so, you know, with hunting now, I can still go be alone for the most part. If I work hard, I can get away from a lot of people and still find, you know, decent animals and all that stuff. You know, it's still available is what I'm saying. And so, I'm just rambling here, but it's different, but I just don't think that the sky's falling. I say that on a lot of podcasts. I just don't think the sky is falling. But if you want it to fall, yeah, we can find all kinds of horrible things, I guess.
But I mean, you can find all kinds of horrible things in everything, right? There's a dark side of life and there's the
Mm-hmm.
light, and which path people choose definitely determines, where they're going to go, number one, and however other people are going to perceive it. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's everything, and I find it funny because I don't really, maybe I just don't pay attention that much to what's going on social media and other things, even though I'm on it, right? I'm active. I'm doing things, for the podcast and all other things. I just don't pay attention. Like, there's that Make Hunting Great Again page or whatever on Instagram, and they're always posting stuff, and I message him all the time, like, what is this story? Who's this person that you're referring to? Or if there's somebody that does something that I do see, I'm like, who is this person? Why are they popular or famous? And he'll tell me most of the time, but it's like, how do I not know all of this? I guess it's because I just don't get wrapped up in it. I don't put people on a pedestal. I don't try and, I'm not idolizing anybody or anything like that. If they're a great hunter or something like that, I follow them and try and see what they're doing. But it's from a learning aspect. It's not because I think they're just, the greatest person in the world. They're a great hunter, and I want to learn something from them. But other than that, I don't get it. I don't know. It's a weird dynamic for sure for the whole social media thing. But
yeah, social media is just like people, because social media is people. People are not all good and people are not all bad. So on social media, that's kind of, I mean, people put out their best face on social media, but we all have warts. And so, if any of that comes up, people like to pounce on that. So, you're probably smart if you're not paying too much attention to it. And I know that I don't pay as much attention to it as I used to. And that's one blessing about being busy is I just can't burn a bunch of time on it. And it's not very, what's the word? Edifying. If you spend too much time on it. What I like about social media is I can stay connected to people, and I love people. I can see cool big bucks on social media. That's probably 60% of my motivation right there. I just want to see what are people getting, what's going on, what's the trends, like this year on the Arizona Strip. These people I'm following, man, I'm not seeing very many big bucks come off the Arizona Strip this year. That's interesting to me, and maybe I'm just missing a few here and there, I don't know, but usually there's just giants showing up in my feed. I'm not seeing that right now. And so that, social media just helps me feel a little bit more connected. But there's been 3 hunts I've had in the last 2 years where I was over 10 days with no cell service, only inReach. One Nevada hunt, one Colorado hunt, one Idaho hunt, just the way it ended up. And dude, you know what? That was awesome to unplug. And I noticed when I came back, I almost had to force myself to get on social media. Like, it was easy to stay off of it, where when I've been home a while and I'm just looking at it every day, it almost becomes my routine. Like, oh, what's going on? And I own half a Rock Slide, huge hunting social media site. And I need to check Rock Slide. I work there. I got to make sure the forum's not blowing up, but when I'm home, I'm just used to, I've probably been on there 8 times today. And so what my point is that, when you get away from it, you kind of realize there's a lot more to life than just staring at my screen. It's not that hard to break away from it. I tell my kids that all the time, you should fast from those things. You should put them away for a while. My daughter did it a couple times this summer. She was just like, no Instagram this week. And she would, or it's not even Instagram. What are the kids? TikTok.
That's even
and
more
she was
mindless.
the same. I know, exactly. Just everything's videos, just everything's videos. And, but she said the same thing. Like, yeah, wasn't that hard after a day or two. And so if when we're finding our identity and all that stuff, and then we're spending all our time on it, it just can't be good, right?
No, definitely
but
not.
it's also not like, hey, social media is of the devil. You can have, you can't have. No, that's not good either. There's some good things. There's some good stuff in it. There really is.
I mean, that's like you and I, for instance, probably wouldn't have ever connected unless I, wrote you an email or something like that without social media. So, I mean, it's definitely got its benefits, and I've connected with some just, truly amazing people and made some actual friends that, and most of the stuff, honestly, that pops up in my feed is hunting. I mean, I got rid of Twitter because it was too toxic for me.
Me too.
Anytime there was something going on or something, I felt compelled that I had to comment on it, and then I was like, "This is ridiculous. What does it even matter? What am I proving by putting my voice out there on social media and voicing an opinion on something that it doesn't matter? If I want to make a difference, go out in the world and actually make a difference. Use my voice for something that's good instead of putting it on a screen to where everybody can see it and read it and maybe throw it back in your face 10 years from now." So I completely got rid of it, and that's probably one of the better things I've done. But have you ever heard of the comfort crisis with Michael Easter wrote it, and it's pretty remarkable the different things that he goes into. But basically, the humans are too comfortable with being comfortable right now in our lives. We've got no discomfort, no challenges, nothing that.
Yep.
I mean, we go from climate control to climate control in our car and then get out for a few minutes or whatever. And some people, I mean, they don't even go outside. As hunters, we get to enjoy that so much more than anybody else and that break. But there's a thing he talks about how much people use their phones and are addicted to social media and the dopamine hit that they get from it, even though it's just a little micro dose every time, but it keeps them addicted. And it's like 22,000 times on average or something like that. The average person touches their phone. And I mean, that's just sickening, and how much they're on social media. But then it goes even further and talks about the 3-day effect, and scientists have actually studied it. And 3 days in nature without any electronic devices or anything can have lasting impact on your body's health and mental state or mental state of being for like an entire month or something like that. I mean, it's crazy,
dude.
The health
just
benefits
what I
happen.
said on those 3 hunts.
Yeah,
I felt better. You're more clear thinking. You're not just worried about where your phone is. And I completely agree with that guy.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. A lot of the stuff that he talks about. And I mean, it goes into detail, but it's really neat to see that and then put that into effect. And it's like, so this year I made a point to myself that I was going to limit my phone usage while I was hunting, because let's face it, like whitetail hunting especially is just passing time and doing an all-day sit. You're going to look at your phone a little bit, but I did take off like Instagram and everything off my phone, so that way I didn't have that. I didn't have that feed or all that kind of stuff. So if I did something, it was just texting my wife or a friend or something real quick, or taking a picture, and then I tried to just put it right back in the pocket and then go hours without it. But I noticed a huge difference. I noticed that clear thinking and just the relaxed, state of mind. And it was kind of nice. Like, I told my wife we went to a real crazy kids' Christmas party, and it was just chaotic and loud in there, and way too many kids for the size of the room to just, you couldn't hear anything. And Santa came and you couldn't hear anything at all. And I told her, I was like, all the benefits I've had from being out there and hunting, I think they all just went away right now today. So, so yeah. But I got to ask you though a little bit more about mule deer hunting. Like, what if somebody were to try and get it? Because I've never mule deer hunted ever. I mean, I don't even know, like, other than the fact that driving out to Colorado, going elk hunting, I've probably seen one of the biggest mule deer I've ever seen on the side of the road in the lowlands of Colorado, right on the plains there. It was crazy, but I mean, so if somebody were trying to get into mule deer hunting and do that, what kind of resources or information would you say they should definitely digest before they even, try and learn the animal species, or even what would you recommend to kind of learn the biology and things like that of the animal and behaviors?
Read. We were talking about getting off social media and doing less of it, and I've kind of got back into reading more books. I've always read a few, but not a lot. But just books are they engage the mind differently, and they're, you on social media, there's so many distractions, messages coming in and jumping around, stuff like that. A book, you can just focus. And so as I've kind of reconnected with books, I still think they're the gold standard for learning. And you can read an article on the computer. I get all that, but the computer is still got distractions, notifications, and the web. I can jump over and check this, stuff like that. So I would start just reading some of the classic mule deer books that are out there. Dwight Schuh's hunting open country mule deer, Walt Prothero's stalking trophy mule deer, Kurt Darner's hunting giant bucks. There's dozens of other ones out there. I'm just not thinking of them off the top of my head. David Long's hunting public land mule deer, The Bottom Line, his book The Edge, my book Hunting Big Mule Deer, How to Take the Best Buck of Your Life. Dennis Winch's, I can't remember the name of his book. I reviewed it last year. It's a good book. 40 years of trophy mule deer hunting, and really good stuff. But just getting a hold of those and reading from a mule deer hunter's perspective and understanding, their mindset. There's a book that came out last year and I reviewed it on my blog, and it's called So You Want to Hunt the West for Mule Deer. It's by Daniel Brannigan. He's actually from my town, and I didn't even know him until this book came out. But he did a great job because he was from Michigan as well. Then he moved to Idaho about 20 years ago, and he had to kind of unlearn all this whitetail stuff. And he became very successful at hunting good mule deer bucks. And so all those resources is what I would dive into. And, a lot of guys are still like, oh, I don't read books. Well, and figure out how. You spent 12 years in school, go use it. Because it's just, dude, you haven't yet heard me say, go join my forum and read the Mule Deer forum on Rockslide. You should. That's a good part of it, but it's not focused learning. It's bits and pieces and, stuff like that. Monster Muleys. That's a good mule deer website. He's kind of the original. Brian LeTurner owns it, and a good mule deer forum on there. But I think if that's all you do, you're not getting. The problem with a forum is it's hard to tell the guys who know what they're doing from the guys who just sound like they know what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And so, and not that some Yahoo can't write a book, but for the most part, a book is hard to write. You got to really love it to do it. And, they cost money, all that stuff to write. You don't just write a book for free. I'm working on one right now, man. And, I'm up to like 60,000 words. That's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So usually if somebody has written a book, they are serious about the endeavor. And so, by focusing on the books, I think that you're going to get you're going to shorten the learning curve the most by doing that. And if all those books I just named, if people are like, what did he say? You can either rewind the podcast or go check out my blog on Rockslide. It's called the Rock Blog. Just type in book reviews on there. I've done a ton of them. I've reviewed, I think every book I just mentioned, I've reviewed on there. And, I really would start with those.
Yeah. I mean, like you were saying, though, the bits and pieces and all that information, even though that's what people want these days, if you want to build a good foundation for something, you need a solid knowledge basis. You can't just get something that's, well, I'm going to take this little bit of information from this and this little bit of information, but you're not actually learning, the biology, the terrain, the habitat, everything associated with that all in one place where it's kind of encompassing and then build upon that. And I think a lot of people, they we'll call them battle scars, right? That they want to take all these different things and just learn to run with it before they can even walk and fully understand it, or, have a conversation with a guy like you on a higher level of, knowledge of actually doing it. And that builds, you know, a lot of scars rather than trying to build that foundation first. So that's, I mean, I think that's super important.
Yeah.
My wife always used to make fun of me because I've got this giant shelf full of books, and she's like, well, why don't you get rid of them? I was like, what if I want to pick it up and reread it? And she's like, why would you want to reread it? And I
Yeah.
said, so I can reabsorb some of that information. You don't retain it all, you know?
Right.
And
And we don't read fiction. We read nonfiction. So you
Yeah.
read nonfiction multiple times. Fiction, yeah, typically you read it once and put it away.
Yeah, definitely. That's for sure. But so, I mean, is there any other, like, so once, say, somebody gets those books and they, you know, go to your blog or they listen to this podcast and they start digesting some of that information, is there somewhere where they can go where there's kind of like a higher level of that? Or would you say that's like a great basis to start with?
I think that's it. That's why I said it first. I would probably start with those books. Probably Dwight Schuh's Hunting Open Country Mule Deer, even though it's geared towards bow hunters, it still gives you a good feel of glassing and how mule deer behave. My book's kind of more of the angle if you're after big deer. Although if you're not after big deer and you read my book, you're just going to shoot smaller deer faster, because the techniques you use on big deer just they turbocharge your hunting for smaller deer. And I would just start reading, and just, there's so many books there to, like David Long's Edge. It's probably, if you're going to archery hunt mule deer, that's a good one to go with. Or Dennis Winch's book, his is written almost geographically specific. He hunted a lot of the lower stuff in, southern Utah, northern New Mexico, places like that. And so, you need to kind of decide on where you're going to hunt on some of these books. David's long first book, Hunting Open Country, as it was called, Public Land Mule Deer, The Bottom Line. That one's kind of geared more towards the high country buck hunter. And so it's hard for me to tell you which one to start with, because everybody's going to have a different background. If you are going to be coming from the east to hunt in the west, Brannigan's book I mentioned, so you want to hunt the west for mule deer. That's the one I would recommend for a guy that's maybe like you, and okay, now I want to make this transition over, because he undoes kind of how whitetail hunting, the parts of it that don't apply to mule deer hunting, and why he struggled for a few years before he finally figured out, okay, this, I can ignore this, I have to pay attention to this, stuff like that. That's a really good one. But somebody that's already living in the West and living in a great place to hunt mule deer, they may be able to go right straight to a Western rider and do just fine.
Yeah. So I got to ask you though, what, like, just on a quick breakdown of like some of the things that that are completely different as far as whitetail hunting versus mule deer, what would, like, maybe a couple of those just kind of be?
From what I understand about whitetail hunting, and reading Brannigan's book kind of helped me understand this a little bit more. It sounds like whitetail in most habitats are fairly evenly distributed, whether it's a low number of deer per square mile or a high number of deer per square mile in any certain geographical area. So let's just say, the southwest portion of Michigan. I don't even know if maybe there's a lake there. I don't know, but there's just something smaller than a state, but bigger than a unit. When I talk to whitetail hunters, it sounds like they can find deer more evenly distributed through that geographical area. Where mule deer hunting, there are large tracts of ground that have very few, if almost zero, mule deer in them. And sometimes it's hard to tell those places apart than places that actually have a decent number of deer in them, or even high numbers of deer. And this has to do with the habitat of mule deer. Mule deer are very migrational. Like some of our mule deer migrate a couple 100 miles. That's just mind blowing. They migrate over gigantic mountain ranges, to go to winter ranges that are 100 miles away. Well, that takes a long time for that to happen. So that deer, is, depending on your seasons, it may be migrating across a couple of states. and many different seasons. Sometimes their migrations start in September and they migrate clear into November, so there's 2 months there where they're one day they may move 15 miles. And so that's a big difference from whitetail hunting. Are the deer in Michigan migratory at all, or are they pretty much where they are year round?
So yeah, like I live in Illinois, but yeah, in the Midwest in general, they kind of have a home range, right? And typically, it's a square mile or a couple square miles, and they stay within that home range. Now the only difference is when the rut kicks in, your whitetail bucks can travel a lot further than that, 5-10 miles even, to try and find does to breed. So that's about the only time you really get that long distance cruise.
Gotcha. But when he moves 5 miles to check some does, there's another buck that also moved 5 miles and might even occupy the space that he left.
Yeah.
So you're just getting a mixing of deer, where we have deer that actually leave entire mountain ranges and units. They leave them. They're just gone and they just move. And so I think that is a big difference between mule deer hunting and whitetail hunting, is that you can be an awesome hunter and you can actually go to where there are no deer. We're talking to, whitetail hunters, that's a little bit harder to do. So I think that would be one thing. And then the other thing is many of our mule deer live in either open or broken country, especially compared to whitetail country. Now I'm not talking the ag country of the Midwest. I mean, that's pretty open too. I guess if you have 8 foot tall corn, it's not. But then when they cut the corn, you can see them. The deer move into the hedgerows and stuff. But they're sort of like the deer around here. They're pretty open. You could come here tomorrow and I could pick you up at the airport and we could drive up on the foothill and set up a pair of 15 power binoculars, and probably within 5 minutes to an hour, I can be showing you lots of mule deer. Okay, I might have to move a little bit, but I'm going to find them that way without ever even getting out of the truck. And so that's vastly different than whitetail hunting. I read whitetail books too, because I think you can learn a lot from deer hunters. And I've read the Benoit brothers books and a few other whitetail guys that are lesser known. And then I follow Hal Blood's podcast. So I listen to those guys talking about big woods whitetails. And these guys don't even see the deer until they shoot it. Where mule deer, I've killed bucks 5 days after I first seen them. It's taken that long to figure out how to kill them. Because of the open country nature, and they move and they hide and they're not out all the time, and so your strategy is often built around that. It's why it's called spot and stalk. You're spotting them and you're stalking them, and sometimes the amount of time between the spot and the stalk, it can literally be days and sometimes even weeks. A guy, that Brian LaTurner that I mentioned that owns Monster Muleys, he killed a buck this year that he's been hunting for 4 years. And I think he only saw it about 6 or 7 times in 4 years. But when he saw it, it was always in the same geographical location, maybe a couple of basins and a ridge, not big, and it took him that long to kill it. And I don't even remember how many days he spent in the area, like 40, 50, a lot.
Wow.
And yet would see the deer, but couldn't kill it, just because of the way mule deer country is. And, it can be highly open, but you still can't see it all unless you're across the canyon. Then you can see the deer, but you can't do anything about it because he's 1,800 yards away. And so to me, those are some of the big difference between mule deer and whitetail. And it's, and most of that's related to terrain, how they have to live. The reason they go on these long migrations is because the mountains get 8 to 10 feet of snow. I mean, there's one mountain range east of here that has had 500 inches of snowfall in a year. What is that? Let's see, 50 inches of snowfall is 4 feet. So that's 40 feet of snow. I mean, that's a lot of flipping snow. And so, that's what's making them migrate like that. They can't just stay there. And then there's other places too, where they just have seasonal migrations to follow the foods that they eat. They dry up in certain places, and so they move to other places. Those are typically shorter migrations, but they're always moving. About the only non-migratory deer that we have are in Arizona, certain parts of it, New Mexico, some of that lowland type deer stuff, deserty deer, they don't migrate much. That's probably a little more geared towards whitetails. And talking to the guys that hunt down there that do pretty good on them, a lot of times they have whitetail tactics. They're hunting blinds, and they're hunting the cover, tracking, things like that, because of where the deer live. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, I think that's like one of the things that makes me curious though, like about how you were talking about there was a film, if somebody wants to really check out like the migration and how far they truly travel. Can't remember the number of the deer. I watched it though. It's like deer number 209 or something like that, right?
Yeah. Eastman's, who's a publisher out here, they have that film on their YouTube channel. I think it's called Perilled Migrations. It's got the word peril in it, Peril. And I think that's the one you're talking about. And if it's not, it's Matthew Kaufman, Kauffman. He's a researcher out of Wyoming, and he's tracking those deer with GPS radio collars. And I think one of them is number 209 or whatever you just said.
Yeah, I can't remember, but it was a mule deer doe that they tracked in like hundreds and hundreds of miles. I don't know, maybe even thousands.
Mm-hmm.
It was ridiculous how far its migration range was, and it did it like year after year or something. It's crazy.
Her name was Jet. And she lived. She wintered on the winter range that's down by Rock Springs, Wyoming, and it might have even been east of Rock Springs, and then. And if it wasn't Jet, it was out of that research study. So people give me a little grace if I'm getting my deer mixed up. But off of that winter range, that deer migrated all the way through western Wyoming up into southeastern Idaho, where I'm at, and eastern Idaho, and then went north of me over the Tetons. Let me back up a little bit. I got my state. She stayed on the Wyoming border side, and then went over the Grand Teton. So Grand Teton is 13,000 feet. Now, she didn't go right over that one, but she went over that range. I mean, the top of that range, a bunch of it's like 10, 5, 11. She went over that and then dropped down into Idaho, and summered in a place called Island Park, which is about 90 miles north of me. And that migration, I think, was about 150 miles. And she did it a couple of years in a row. And then she didn't make it over the Tetons, I think, last year. She had her fawn on the Wyoming side. And, there was speculation, maybe she's getting older, who knows, stuff like that. But yeah, we're even if we don't have the right numbers and deer names and everything, we're talking about the same study that they're doing. And it's pretty dang impressive.
Yeah, no, that's pretty neat to see. And not only that, it gives you kind of perspective of so you can kind of figure out, once again, how we were talking about trying to figure out the animals and where they can be at certain times of the year, and trying to figure out, okay, well, if you're here and there's no deer here, obviously you're in the wrong range, and trying to figure out browse and all that kind of stuff. It can go pretty deep. Is there any kind of like research or anything you'd recommend for somebody to read as far as different browse or something?
No, I don't know the plants of the mule deer either. I know very few of them. Antelope, bitterbrush, and sage. I mean, just the basics is all I know. I know what it looks like, but I don't know the names of it. And this is why you don't have to know that stuff. You just have to know what is traditional mule deer range. And that can just be done with a simple phone call to your biologist. And so, a lot of people are like surprised, wow, you write books and articles and you don't know all the stuff. Well, it's because I never had to. I didn't, I don't need to go, memorize some 3-part Latin word of a plant. If you want to, you can, but I can show you where those plants grow based on just watching mule deer over the years and where they feed and all that kind of stuff. And I get a lot of guys that don't live here that ask me that question, and I'm like, no, just skip that part and call the biologist and tell them you want to come to Idaho and you're going to hunt our general season, which in the majority of our state is October 10th to 24th. They're going to tell you where to start. And because you're hunting open country animals, then you just start with your glass. And I do a lot of tracking. I do stuff like that too, but it's not that hard to find them that I've got to know the exact weed that they're eating. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that stuff's kind of all secondary to me. And believe me, if I thought there was some magic to unlock there, I would be studying it all the time. But I've hunted mule deer clear up on the Canadian border and boreal forests, which are completely different than what's down here. And I killed a 6-year-old deer. I don't know what they ate. I just found open areas where the timber was broken and started looking for tracks. Plus I went with a friend who lived there, and, he narrowed down the country like, hey, they've migrated out of these ranges. They're over here now. So that's how I approach it right there. I think you can really, really overthink this stuff. And there's just so much information on, traditional mule deer range and where to go and everything. But that's what I always push people towards. And, just talk to your wildlife, to your mule deer biologist. Just about every region of a state is going to have their own mule deer biologist. And, in 5 minutes, they're going to be able to tell you, all the places to start. And if you're hunting at this time of year, go here. If you're hunting at this time of year, go here. It's not that hard to figure out.
Nice. No, I think that's good information and good way to look at it. A lot, like you said, a lot of people can overcomplicate that, and who knows, maybe I'm one of those guys that sometimes does that. But that's
well, if you haven't been here, you start to lean on that because you're like, gosh, I want to learn as much as I can, and there's no fault in that, no, not at all, But it's just like the guys that spend 40 hours on Google Earth and then they come out here and they're still having a hard time finding deer. It's like, talk to the people. Just talk to the people. That'll narrow it down. And once you've seen it, that's the other thing that surprised guys, how little I use Google Earth. And maybe I should use it more. I don't know. But once I've seen a place and I've seen how mule deer, what they're eating, and, I can just look at the color of the hill and the color of the vegetation and tell you, yeah, this has got potential here. I need to get in there with my binoculars and look around and look for tracks and stuff. I could be wrong, but for the most part, I'm not. And so, there's nothing wrong with overthinking it. I'm just saying that once you get out here, you're able to start putting the pieces together. It'll come together a lot faster than you probably think.
That's interesting. Good to know.
And if I was coming to you're in Illinois, right?
Yep.
If I was coming to Illinois, the first thing I would be doing is calling the biologists out there and then asking them, where else can I get resources? And if it's all private land, then I got to get connected with guys that are hunting the private land, the farms, the stuff like that. But ultimately, people are still going to be your best resource, and that's going to shorten your learning curve a lot. And the buddy system, that's huge. If you want to come out west and hunt mule deer, do the best you can to. There's no shame in going with a guide. There is really not. It's some very smart guys I know have just decided, I'm going to hire a guide for my first trip. They learn so much, just hanging with somebody that's been here before. They could do DIY hunts for the rest of their life, and they're going to get all that money back that they paid. But if that's not possible, make a friend. When I killed that big buck in up by Canada, I just made that friend over the internet. There's another good side of social media. I didn't know this guy. His name's Trevor Carlson. I just said I wanted to hunt up there. Can anybody share any information? He did. This was on Monster Muleys about 10 years ago. And gosh, we became friends. And the buddy system was just huge. I mean, he cut my learning curve down by weeks, because I had never hunted boreal deer. No way. So to your listeners and stuff, if you can just make a friend out there somewhere, that can really, really help you.
Yeah, no, I think that's good information. And I think that's something that's kind of, I will say, with a lot of the stuff, that mentorship seems kind of lost. Like, not as many people, maybe I'm wrong, but not as many people are reaching out or trying to do it, because there are so many resources available at your fingertips now. But, or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe people aren't as willing to help, but I'm sure they are if you ask them. So that's a good,
You know what?
point.
We were talking about that earlier. That's probably something that has changed is, excuse me, you don't have to have a mentor now. Where in 1975, you kind of had to know somebody that hunted. There was nothing available. I mean, what were you going to read? There was one mule deer book out there that I can think of. There was no resources. And, a lot of people, I mean, nobody called a biologist back then. That's just not what you did. Kurt Darner was the one that kind of popularized that. And, now they have to have an information officer answering the phone so the biologist can actually get his work done, and so that might be something that's changed right there, is because there's so much information available. People don't focus on getting a mentor, but I don't think that reduces the effectiveness of getting a mentor. I think it could totally shorten your learning curve, even though all these books are available and all these internet resources and Google Earth. Just having somebody to kind of point you in the right direction. And because if you had to do that before, you did, it was pretty dang hard to hunt a place blindly 25 years ago and be successful at all. You had to have some information from a live human.
Yeah. No, so you hear that? Everybody reach out to Robbie Denning and ask him to mentor you. And
I answer as many Instagram, and you can vouch for me. I answered yours, right? It took me a while, but I got it answered, right?
No, it's all good. Yeah. I'm just kidding, but no, for real, that's a good thing to do. That mentorship is great, and I agree with you. It cuts your learning curve way down. I wish I would have had a mentor to learn how to whitetail hunt instead of having so many mistakes on my own, and I'd probably have a bunch of booners on the wall by now. But sometimes you don't always go that path, but it's a good path to go down for sure. Robbie, it's been great talking to you, and before we go here, I'd love to just kind of tell everybody where they can find you, how they can, if they need to, reach out to you, and where they can find your book.
Yeah, you bet, dude. My book's on Amazon. It's called Hunting Big Mule Deer: How to Take the Best Buck of Your Life. I would love it if people got on there and checked it out. You don't even have to commit to buying it. You can just jump on there. They've got some sample pages you can take a look at. It is available on Kindle. In fact, if you want color pictures in your version, definitely go with the Kindle. The Kindle's dirt cheap, like $10, $12. It's not very much. And I think if you're on there, like their Amazon Prime Book Club, you even get it for free. But we've got the good old paper copy in there. Check that out. I'm working on a second book right now. Hope to have it out next spring. I'll have more information on that as it kind of comes together. I'm writing every day right now on that, like 6 days a week. So hope to have that. I also am the editor at Rock Slide. That's a large Western hunting forum, and it's spelled rock, ROK, slide.com. And I'm the editor on there. You'll see me and my assistant editor, Justin Crossley. We're putting out 2-3 articles a week. They're typically gear reviews, stuff like that. We've got a huge forum on there. That's another resource. Definitely join a forum. It's a good resource to have. But as I said earlier in the podcast, it's not your only resource, but it's a good resource to have. I think a forum will help keep you current on current events and season changes and getting tags, things like that. They're really good for that kind of stuff. But you can connect with me on Rock Slide. You'll see me on there. Just search my name. I don't have a screen name. It's my real name, Robbie Denning. I am on social media. I do my best to get all my DMs answered. If you hit me with a bunch of where to, I usually just kind of duck out of those because they just take too much time. But just basic stuff, saying hi, whatever, happy to try to help with any of that stuff too. And you can just find me on Instagram or Facebook under Robbie Denning.
That's great. Robbie, I appreciate it. Thank you for taking your time and trying to educate us a little bit. And it's been good talking to you.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me on.
And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.